Hey, it's Mr. Lum again, and we've upgraded. You can see my face now, so you can see that's a picture of me. Um, anyways, um, we're going to be talking about dominant versus recessive alleles, and we talked a little bit about this last time. So we're going to be using the trait like flower color, and so for flower color, there's two different alleles: the dominant allele, which is the purple flower, and the recessive allele, which is the white flower. So here are some examples of different types of flowers with their genotypes. So a genotype means the genes that make up what the flower is. So here are the genotypes right here. And these are the phenotypes. So what does the flower look like? So here we have a purple flower, we have another purple flower, and here we have a white flower right there. So, um, so with this one right here, we have two dominant alleles, capital P, capital P. So this one has two dominant alleles. This one has a dominant allele and a recessive allele, and this one has two recessive alleles. So even though the phenotype for this one is purple, it does carry a white allele right there. But since this one is dominant, the phenotype is still purple. We can't see the recessive white. This one has no dominant genes at all, so he has the two recessive white flower alleles, and so that is the reason why this one is white. So our next couple of definitions are homozygous and heterozygous. A homozygous means a plant has the same alleles for a trait, and heterozygous means a plant has different alleles for a trait. So for this one right here, these two right here are homozygous. They are homozygous because it has the same alleles, capital P, capital P. This one is homozygous. It has little p, little p. This one is heterozygous. That means the plant has different alleles for a trait. So capital P here and a little p. Now we can, going back to this homozygous one, we can split it up. This one would be considered homozygous dominant because it has dominant alleles. And this would be called homozygous recessive. Because it has two recessive alleles. And this one's just heterozygous. It has one dominant and one recessive. So now the next big question is, if we have two different plants and they have offspring, how do you predict what are they going to be making? So if we're going to be predicting what they're going to be making, first off, we have to know what the parents look like. So here I have an example right here. A parent has big G, little g. So again, these are the genotype of this parent, big G, little g. And the genotype of the other parent is little g, little g. So what a Punnett square is that we just make a big square like this and divide it into 4 boxes. We place one parent on this side right here. So I'm going to place big G, little g. And then I take the other parent and I place it on this box right here, little g, little g. And then we just fill in these boxes. So this one gets a big G coming in from this one over here. So it gets G, and then it gets a little g right here. And then for down here, we get the little g coming in from here. So it's little g, and then a little g right here. And then for this one over here, we get a big G from over here. So big G, and then a little g. And this one down here gets little g, little g. So if G was an allele that said how high the plant grows, so in other words, stem length, and big G was long stems and little g was a short stem, then we would say that 50% or 2 out of 4 are going to be big G, little g. So 50% or 2 out of 4 will be tall plants or long stem. And then for this one, which is little g, and little g, and little g, 2 out of 4, which is little g, would be short stem. So, so 50% would be long stem and 50% would be short stem. And so we can use this, these Punnett squares, to predict the percentages or the approximate percentages of how everything's going to play out. So here's another example right here. We're going to do another Punnett square. I'm going to put this one right here, H, H, and this one up here, H, H. I cross everything, H, 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 and then little h, then big H, little h, big H, little h. So let's imagine this one is big H is maybe smooth peas, and little h is wrinkled peas. So what would happen is that we would have for genotypes, we'd have 1 out of 4, because there's 4 different possibilities, is going to be big H, big H. 2 out of 4 is going to be big H, little h. And 1 out of 4 is going to be, oops, I made a mistake here. Little h comes down here, little h goes over there, that should be little h, little h. Then 1 out of 4 should be little h, little h. Okay, and so these would be the possible outcomes for genotypes, but the possible outcomes for phenotypes, since these ones are exactly the same because they both have a dominant allele in there, all of these ones right here will be smooth, peas. So these one would be smooth peas, and then would have 25% or 1 out of 4 would be wrinkled. So possible outcomes would be 75% smooth, 25% wrinkle. Okay. So here's another example right here, and it just says we have a heterozygous and we have a homozygous recessive. So we're going to make a Punnett square of this one and figure everything out. So we draw our square. Now we run into a problem because it doesn't actually tell us the genotype. It says heterozygous and homozygous recessive. So you can just pick any letter that you want at random. So I'm going to pick the letter T. So this one says heterozygous, so that means it's going to be capital T, little t. And this is homozygous but recessive. So that means it's going to be recessive means small letters or lowercase. So it'll be little t, little t. And so I'm going to place this on my Punnett square. So I'm going to go capital T, and then little t, little t. Do my cross. Okay. Oh, made another mistake here. Big T comes over here. Okay, so what happens is that I get 50% of, or in other words, 2 out of 4 are these ones right here, which are big T, little t. 2 out of 4 are little t, little t. So it didn't really say what the trait was. If the trait said something like, I don't know, yellow, say if big T meant yellow peas, yellow, and little t meant green, right? Then 50% of our plants are going to be making yellow peas, and then 50% of our plants are going to be making green peas. Okay. So, anyways, that is kind of how we do Punnett squares. So hopefully you're ready to figure out your worksheet.